The problem with wearing black is I did have brought half a cat with me. Sorry about that. I could stand here and pick it all off. I look like Dave Allen on steroids or something. Sort of here all day. It's been an interesting week, obviously, not just in politics and the life of the nation, but personally. Most of you know, our grandchildren are in Norwich, and Alex has had an operation on his knee, so he's not been awfully mobile. His wife's not mobile the best of times, so Ivy was taken down there on the Monday and left down there to look after the children and to help for a week, and I went to fetch her back on Friday. This was all right, because the Monday the A17 was shut when I was coming home, and it was a bit dark and I was a bit tired, and I must have mucked up the directions of the diversion route in this folding. And I mucked up the directions, which did actually mean I went through Bourne again. So
Again?
So obviously a bit of a stressful week for Heidi there. So she comes back and the first thing she does is a nice relaxing bath and a German gin. Just like a London gin, but with 2 tonics. So, where are we today? John chapter 11, verses 17 to 27. John 11, verse 17. So when Jesus came, he found that he'd already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away. And many of the Jews had joined the women around Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Now Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." Amen. Thanks be to God, for this is gospel of salvation. Now, let's just sneak back into the thing. So obviously when it says he came and he found that he had been in the tomb 4 days. We need to be clear who we're talking about. He came is Jesus, and he who had been in the tomb 4 days is Lazarus. Because Lazarus has died, and last week we were talking about how Jesus heard that Lazarus has died, then stayed where he was 2 more days. Now, some commentators have suggested that Jesus was confused or undecided about what to do or whether to go or what. And I would like to say, if I espoused a position like that, I would expect the front row to move a little bit further back and Clive and Rose to go and hide behind that counter, because with a bolt of lightning time, you might be hit by some frisbee shrapnel. So we're not going to espouse a thing like that, but we're going to just think. And the back end of the sentiment from last week, verse 16, and Thomas, who is called the twin, said to his fellow disciples. I mean, let us go with him. I mean, how was he about that? Was he like Rambo or Arnold Schwarzenegger? Or was he going, "Let us go with the teacher, hand me my big gun, that we may die with him"? Or was he giving it the Jack Dees, going, "Oh, let's go with the teacher, that we may die with him"? Because the fact is that he's talking about Lazarus. Lazarus is in Bethany. Bethany, you know, last time he went near Bethany, he nearly got stoned. I mean, I think we've all had nights out like that, haven't we? But I mean, Bethany was not a good place for Jesus to go. You know, it was dangerous. They ganged up on him there. They didn't like him. You know, the authorities and stuff. So anyway, Jesus, back to the passage we're on. Lazarus has been dead 4 days, and Jesus rocks into town. So basically, it's only 2 miles, but that's a pretty good journey. That's like your sort of half a day, isn't it? Sort of thing. Well, nice bit of walking. Anyway, he's there, so he could easily got there before if he wanted to. And he's been dead 4 days. Now, it's important the 4 days because the Jews believed that you're proper dead after 3 days, basically. That's why Jesus is into 3 days, because Jesus got this gig going, proper dead. Now, medicine, let's face it, medicine was not up to it in those days. You didn't have National Health Service, you couldn't get out of the old Bupa hospital and get sorted out and what have you. And there was this thing about swoon. Basically, you could dead faint, and people thought you were dead. So basically, they lay them out and then have the wake. I love English, it's fantastic English. You look at the sentence, you can work out what it means. The wake is the funeral party to see if you'll wake up before you bury them. Because you don't really want to bury somebody who's still alive, but just swoon, do you? So you have to wait and see if they'll wake up. And that. So, but Lazarus, after 4 days, is provably dead and decomposition has set in. Right? Decomposition has set in. We know he's dead. It's a hot country. Wallop. He's not just dead, he's dead. That is it. He's gone. He's dead. Everybody knows he's dead. So, when he later walks, it's going to be a miracle. That's the reason for the delay. That is the reason he's setting up for nobody being able to talk this out. The swoon, he woke up at the funeral, what have you, and diddly. Now, people had come round and joined the women around Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. This is the traditional thing. They'd come round and we've got this big funeral coming up, haven't we, with the Queen, and there's going to be loads of people in the area. It's going to be packed, isn't it? And then there's going to be loads of people watching it on television screens, out in parks and centres and stuff, and then there's people at home. Millions of people are going to get involved in that. Sometimes I think it's a bit sad with us ordinaries, because funeral seems to be the word, because only a few people turn up. So, So these people are turned up, and the traditional thing, I love how the Old Testament and some of the Jewish rules and things were really, really sensible. God has imparted these rules for a reason, because he's trying to keep people going. And they got this rule about you couldn't prepare and eat. You couldn't prepare food in the house where the dead person was. So people would bring food in, and traditionally that was bread, hard-boiled eggs and lentils, and it was brought in from other houses in the village. Now that's eminently sensible from a medical point of view, because you've not prepared food near a dead body with leakage and other issues. So, so people have come round and they brought food round, and also because you didn't really want to go and prepare food when you're crying your eyes out because your relations died. So that's why I think Charles had a very raw deal. He's probably one of the very few people in the country, the only person in the country maybe, who didn't get the day off when his mum died. I got the day off when my mum died. He didn't. And it wasn't that normally if somebody relatively famous in the public eye relation dies, the press leave them alone. He got it worse. He had to appear, he had to do certain things, and that. Anyway, I went round to comfort them, and we can see the Old Testament laws making sense there. And it's like the thing about they worked out when they were talking, when they invented this thing about hand washing in hospitals, and they watched diseases go around the obstetrics gynecology ward down the lot. Someone's had it, well, everybody got it. And then they watched the Jewish gynecologist literally wash his hands between patients because he touched unclean areas. and thought, oh, that's a good idea, isn't it? It didn't happen when he was on, but it happened when the people who weren't literally washing between the beds were on. So that's God, hundreds and hundreds of or thousands of years ago, sorting out things that a couple of hundred years ago our scientists couldn't work out. So God, you watch God and watch how it's done, really. So anyway, Jesus rocked up, and Martha, as soon as she heard he was coming, she went out to meet him. Didn't wait for him to arrive. When he was still a way off, came out to meet him, just like the prodigal, isn't it? Now, verse 21. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Now that's 50% reproach. If he'd been here, he wouldn't have died. And 50% faith. If you had been here, it would have been all right. 50% of this, 50% that. But then there's the faith statement, the but, because there's always a but, isn't there? But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. I mean, theoretically, it would have been all right just getting the message to Jesus, wouldn't it? As we know from the example of the centurion's servant, but Jesus doesn't actually have to be there to get stuff done. He just gives the word and it happens, because that's what happens when you're the king of the universe. You know, that's what happens when you're fully God. You know, and whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And he said, Lord, brother will rise again. Now in verse 24, Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day. Now, this is important because of the belief at the time. Now, when you got into this, this is actually a high statement of faith and position. He will rise on the last day. It sets her out as being in the Pharisaic tradition, because they had this hope of the resurrection on the last day. The Sadducees didn't. The Sadducees had got this bit going. Basically, Sheol, which wasn't quite hell, it's a place where everybody who died went to, and it was kind of all right because all the dead were there, and that was it. Sheol, okay, that's Sheol, and that's it. But there's no hope beyond that. So it made them very sad, you see. Anyway, so he's basically, then she's setting the scene for Jesus to make one of his great I am statements. So he says, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Now, it's I am, and once again, it's the punctuation thing. He's saying I am because that's how they all put God. God's the I am who I am, and is God. It basically is putting the full stop in. If you put a full stop in there after the I am, capitalise the I am, and go, I am the resurrection and the life. So it's God, the resurrection and the life. He's saying it of himself, but which it means he's saying that he's God again, because they still haven't got the message fully. And he's saying, God, the resurrection and the life, because God the Father will be in a short time, and of course time not bothering God in that way, resurrecting God the Son to give us all life. But in the context of the wordage that they're using, they're not just talking about life as in you don't die and you get to heaven and you get to be with Jesus. They're talking about full life now, because what they've done is he's harking back a page and a half to John 10, where he's talking about the good shepherd. Thief comes not except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. So he's talking again. He's continuing a theme. He's continuing on and linking through. He's linking back to the abundant life that he was talking about in chapter 10. But he's signposting forward. He's signposting forward to Calvary and the cross. Now, abundant life. Yeah. The other week, Malcolm was on, he was talking about various things, and he was getting a bit scientific. I happen to like that, because I can follow all that. And he said to me, I wish I'd explained Ohm's law. I should have done that. And that's V equals IR. And VIR sounds like a football referee electric thing, doesn't it? But it's not. V equals IR. The current through a conductor between 2 points is directly proportional to the voltage across those 2 points. And I think basically that tells us about God's plan. I like it tells us God's got a plan, which is shocking, but it tells us that God's got a plan. If he's got a plan for your life, he wants you to do it. So resistance is futile, you know. And God, you know, he wants you to be a conductor. And I'm not talking about the sort of conductor on the buses. We're not talking about on the buses. I don't like on the buses because you didn't have to wait. It wasn't a shock when you got to the end of the programme and find out the butler did it. But being conducted, not talking about that. He's talking about this directly proportional stuff. You know, the power, if the power is going through 2 points in your body, then you've got this, going across. So if you've got more power, to give more out, you know, but he wants us to be strengthened and renewed so that we can deal with this stuff, that we can be strengthened to do these things, because he's got a plan, but then he wants us to be strengthened so that we can do it. Now, work story alert, Mark and I were out indoor doing a big decking job. Now this customer had got his deck, and he got very expensive deck board on top. Mark said it was £4,000 worth of mineral board deck on top of this deck. It's a massive deck. 7.5 metres by 4 and a bit, massive. And a very, very, very posh deck board to sort it all out. And underneath, the joists were rotten. So he lifted a couple of joists. He said the deck's sagging, and I don't want to have a look at it. So he took these boards up and had a look. And then they hadn't used tonnelised timber, they just used ordinary timber underneath. And the deck joists were rotten. So we had to lift the top of this deck off, stack it to one side, all careful like. And then we had to strip out all the rotten stuff. And we had to, until none was left, absolutely none was left, to strip it out, bag it up, pile it in a skip, and all that, and then stripped it away, and we got rid of it, so it was not there anymore, and nowhere near. And then we had to put in nice, new, strong timbers, and all straight and all in line, all supporting, and put these boards back on. I mean, to be honest, we worked for over 2 weeks, and you couldn't really tell what we'd done, because it still looked the same, because it's still got this mineral board deck top, only it was slightly less bouncy than it was before. So was I actually, because I was knackered. But the point we're getting to here is the strength of his renewal, because we got rid of all the old stuff was stripped away, and there's none left. And that's what God wants to do for us. He wants to get his drill out. He wants to lift some deck boards and have a look underneath. Find the stuff that he's stripping out, strip it away until there's absolutely none left, and then replace the deck board so that we look the same, but we're actually much stronger inside. And that enables us to be the conductor of the thing. So he wants us to be able to be the conductor, to pass on the stuff that he gives us, and he wants to renew us. So if you feel like you're walking around with a nice deck top, public face, but you've got stuff inside that needs to be stripped away, then please, you know, come and have a chat, and we'll pray about it and stuff like that. Because look, this is what it's about. It's about being strengthened and renewed for him to be his conductor.